I think it's an accepted truth that Tom Tullis was an expert in his craft and truly just an all around very kind and genuine human. But something that I want to share that underscores his notoriety is that at the end of a call once with a recruiter a few years ago, the recruiter had asked me if I knew Tom Tullis. And when I responded that I had, he had said, "Oh, good. My mentor told me that any good UX candidate should be familiar with Tom Tullis." My heart really goes out to Cheryl and his family and anyone whose lives that he positively impacted, which we know was very many people.
We lost a good friend, mentor, user experience leader, all-around good guy, and member of our UXPA Boston Board of Directors to COVID-19. Tom Tullis was always kind to me and the user experience community. I believe one of the reasons I was hired at Liberty Mutual Insurance in 2008 was because of all the portfolio samples I had in statistics from his graduate class measuring the user experience at Bentley University. I'll miss you, Tom, but I have plenty of great memories. You are a legend.
Hi, I'm Ginny Reddish, and I want to express my deep condolences to Cheryl and everyone in Tom's family. We will greatly miss Tom. I've known Tom for decades, and I think the most interesting and wonderful thing about Tom was always his generosity. It was very unusual to allow people to come into the labs at a private company and for a private company to allow their people to share what they learned in the usability testing. But Tom did both. He welcomed visitors to his lab with his colleagues, and he came to conferences and talked about what they had learned. And in particular, Tom and his colleagues did a lot of studies that helped special groups, older people. He did research on accessibility, and he was always extremely generous about sharing that. The other thing that I really will miss about Tom is his photography, because when I couldn't get to a UXPA meeting, it was always wonderful to look at all of what Tom had photographed. And so I really will miss him. And again, my deepest condolences to everyone in Tom's family.
Hi, I'm Linda, and Tom was my manager for about 4 years. We would reconnect at conferences, and each time what stayed with me was his love of teaching and his absolute love for his family. He would give me updates on what was happening with his wife and his children, and what he discovered about his genealogy. I think he was really tickled to find that Jesse James was in his family tree. He taught me how to be humble, and now he's teaching me that life is rather short and to make the most of it like he did. My sympathies go out to his family. Thank you for touching all of our lives, Tom. I will miss you.
Hey, I wanted to record a tribute to Tom Tullis, who was an incredible help to virtually all of us in the Boston user experience professional community. What I admire most about Tom was his complete transparency and openness. He was always willing to talk to you and let you know what he thought, and whether he was speaking in a large public gathering or just privately, you always felt you were getting the straight answers from Tom. And in terms of me, how it affected me personally, I think all of us were amazed at the usability lab that he built at Fidelity, and that helped all of us see a bigger picture and a bolder picture for user experience than we might have without his guidance and without his leadership creating something like that. Tom was a wonderful man and an enormous asset to our community, and we will all miss him, and I will miss him.
Tom Tullis was an early influence on me, and I don't know when I first met him or saw him or became aware of him, but he was always there at UXPA events and when I attended Boston events. He's just always there, and I was always impressed primarily by the way he led his teams at Fidelity. They were just always showing their work. They were always sharing their experiences, sharing their findings, and selflessly helping other people to do better work. that type of experience just doesn't come very easily or is very common, especially with corporate work. It just doesn't happen. And the fact that it did happen there and that there was a willingness to learn, to explore, and to be wrong made those jobs at Fidelity even more impressive and desirable. And I attribute all that to Tom. Whether or not that's the case, it didn't really matter because his presence made that obvious that he was the influence. He was always there with the posters. He was friendly and willing to answer questions, and his openness made it obvious that he was certainly a big influence. He was integral to having this happen. And his smile and laugh were just wonderful to observe and to be around at UXPA. And his photos are an everlasting gift to all of us. And he left behind a better place. And I'm very, very glad that he was an influence in my life, in my UX career.
First and foremost, I'd like to express my condolences to Cheryl and all of the Tullis family. I think what I admired the most about Tom was his generosity and his kindness. This was a man who had every reason to be aloof or patronizing, but never was. His knowledge was your knowledge. He was always glad to share it. My experiences at the top of their career game can hold cards close to the vest, but Tom never did. It didn't matter if you'd been in the UX field for 1 week or 50 years. He was willing to help you on your UX journey. As far as my career, there's definitely a pre and post Tom Tullis dichotomy. Meeting Tom sent me on a new course and ultimately led to me writing a book about applying data mining techniques to UX research data. But without his books, mine would never have been written. This book in particular, written with the great Bill Albert, is the bedrock upon which we all stand. Lastly, Tom was just a lot of fun. Who but Tom would have dreamt up Quant versus Qual SmackDown, where we all dressed up as professional wrestlers at the annual UXPA conference. I was so honored when he asked me to be his Quant partner and so honored to be Mr. Confidence Interval while he was Mr. T-Test. It was really one of my all-time favorite memories. We really had a blast at the SmackDown. Godspeed, Tom. You will always be in our minds and our hearts.
It's hard to pinpoint exactly when I met Tom, but I know that we met mid-90s at a SIGHI meeting. He was walking around taking pictures, and we bonded over photography and the geekiness of talking about lens and all of that, shutter speed. I think it was even film time. We were even using film. But I wanted to share two delightful memories. One, Tom used to teach in the classroom that I taught, but he was in the, he taught the class before me. And so I would see him once a week in that 10-minute period between classes. It was always so much fun. He was always wearing a funny t-shirt. And I remember one time I came a few minutes early and he had a spreadsheet in the back, and he looked like a little kid in a candy shop, just so excited to share his knowledge about, quantitative methods. It was a joy. But my most fun was the Qual versus Quant SmackDown. I got to say, it was the most fun presentation I've had in years because there was such, again, joy in making this fun, in not just having a panel where we sat and talked, but like thinking about who we could embody, what sort of superhero, a qualitative or a quantitative researcher would be, and how that would play out. A lot of those were his ideas, and I'm grateful to have had that time to have done that with him. He's going to really be missed a lot. May his memory be for a blessing.
Hi, my name is Dave Rollert. What I admire most about Tom Tullis was his ability to create a vibrant but professional subculture within a bigger culture. I worked at Fidelity for 6 years, and Tom's lab was this treasured resource that the UX team had to work with. It enabled us to really do the work right. And Tom was great at both establishing the credibility of that team and also making it work really well to serve to serve the company, including speaking difficult truths to us designers at times. So basically, that's how my life was impacted by Tom Tullis. And in subsequent years, I really enjoyed his quizzes on U-Test, even though they generally were humiliating because I didn't know all the answers. But anyway, Tom was a wonderful man, and I feel very privileged to have known him.
Happy Father's Day, Tom. I know your family will especially miss you today, and we all miss you. You've touched so many curious minds, loving hearts, and lively souls for decades. If there was any doubt, which there wasn't, yesterday's celebration of your life made your positive impact on the world even clearer. Given your interest and awareness in so many things, I have to wonder if your family picked the day and time for your life celebration to embrace the summer solstice. Even if that was just a coincidence, I find it poignant, the longest day. I'm a little later making this video than I intended. They say you procrastinate about important things, the things that have great emotional bearing, the things you feel most strongly about. I met you when my oldest was a baby. Now he's a man. That's a lot of living. I've had the pleasure of knowing you through Fidelity, through Bentley, and through the even broader user research and design community. I've been blessed to see you in your retirement at conferences and industry events. I never had the pleasure of experiencing you as my manager, but I have consistently heard from those you've managed about how human and approachable you were, how you would effortlessly listen and empathize with your employees, and, if I may, how you would work toward healing through ideas or experiments toward building a healthier community, however large or small that community was. It's what's known as servant leadership, but you weren't practicing or applying concepts of servant leadership. You were just being you. I think that's the way I've known you the best, leader. Not loudly announcing, "Follow me, I know the way," but logically and peacefully leading others to a better place. Logically, in that you brought facts. And if you didn't have the facts, you'd get them through scientific methods. And peacefully, in that you had sensitivity toward others' values and beliefs, whether business related or personal. You were always transparent with your team, giving visibility, voice, and even votes where others might not make the effort. You were just being you. Anyone who knows the UXPA knows their high regard and deep encouragement for a thoughtful and ethical code of conduct. From do no harm through provide all resultant data or something like that, you've exemplified what it means to conduct oneself according to the code. And not because it's the code or because you wanted to be politically correct in some way, but because you were just being you. So much of what most experienced designers do isn't as serious as keeping people alive. That's probably why I like your Bell Labs high voltage testing story the best. I can never remember the precise details, but essentially, Bell Labs created a voltage sensor so that their field workers could be sure they wouldn't electrocute themselves. The sensor had two lights. If one illuminated, there was no risk of electrocution. If both illuminated, the high voltage was still present and death awaited the worker should he or she continue. You put this device to the test in a mock situation, and surprisingly, to those listening to the story, the device was clearly understood 99% of the time. It's pretty good, except when you're testing for life or death. Your work raised awareness about the non-intuitive nature of the device and how important 100% understanding was, in this case. It's hard to imagine how many lives might otherwise have been sacrificed to reach the same conclusion. You were just being you. You've enlightened me, Tom Tullis, as I go about my life, trying to do the right thing, practicing humility and servant leadership, working on bringing greater understanding, more transparency, and in other ways being conscious about who I am and how I comport myself. I have your life's examples to reflect upon, your conduct to emulate. I've had the great privilege of knowing you personally. While I won't get to bring you to my new place of work as a guest speaker or even get to see you at industry events anymore, I completely understand that you've scaled your operation and broadened your base of influence. Now you can truly guide researchers, testers, designers, and others everywhere. Thank you, Tom Tullis, for just being you.
Hi, my name is Mike Burns, and I want to express my deepest sympathies and condolences to Cheryl and to Tom's family. Tom was a special person. He was smart, he was generous, and he was a true leader. He's going to be deeply missed by a lot of people. Tom and I met back in the early 1980s when we were both young whippersnappers at Bell Labs. And we took different paths, but ended up in the mid-80s working in the United States manned space program. Tom at McDonnell Douglas in California, and myself at with Lockheed in Houston at Johnson Space Center. And we attended several different meetings together related to early design of human-computer interaction on the space station. And I want to tell a story about one of those meetings. It was an early video conference meeting in the early days of video conferencing, and just so happened that Tom and I were the first two participants, Tom in California and me in Houston. And Tom had told me about a week earlier privately that he was going to be leaving McDonnell Douglas and taking a different job. And so when I saw Tom through the video, it just sort of was natural for me to ask him, had he told his manager yet that he was going to be leaving. As soon as I said that, Tom's face dropped, and then about 2 seconds later, his manager walked in from the side. I was such an idiot. I didn't even think about the fact that somebody else could be off camera and still hear what I was saying. I don't know what I was thinking. But anyway, I've always admired Tom for the fact that he continued to be my friend after that screw up. And we ended up having a lot of laughs in later years about that episode. I'm going to miss Tom a lot.
Tom was a giant in our field, though you'd never know it when interacting with him. He was just so down to earth and so modest and just such a wonderful person. I only knew Tom 12 years, but I was lucky to work with him in different capacities in those 12 years. As a student, as a researcher, and as a colleague on the UXPA Boston Board of Directors. And I wish I had gotten to work with him more, as we all do. And we were all especially excited when he ran for and won the board position, because we knew he'd bring a great energy to the board. And he did. I first hung out with Tom in the summer of 2008. I had just finished the HFID program and volunteered at CHI in Florence, the ACM CHI conference. And Tom was there with his camera, of course. And I was excited to be able to hang out with him and get to know him a little bit more, because I had him as a professor and seemed like a nice guy. And there was we hung out a little bit and then got to know him a little bit. But there was one afternoon that Tom, Chauncey, and a few others were touring around Florence, and I was just so amazed. I was surrounded by these great people in the UX field, and I was just so amazed at how down to earth Tom was. I envisioned him again as this such a great person in our field, and he was just talking with us like everybody else, just like every other person, and that was just so wonderful. And I was amazed at how down to earth he was. I was also amazed at how he took a picture from almost every window going up the Duomo steps. But we did make it to the top there. And I was excited to get to work with Tom on UXPA Boston board for a few years. He always brought such clear thinking and a great attitude to the table. And that's the thing when I remember most about him is his wonderful attitude and his willingness to pitch in. He always had this great smile on his face and his infectious laugh. He just brought a great energy to the room, and we're all going to miss that energy. Tom educated an entire generation of user experience practitioners, and those who got to learn from him directly were the lucky ones. We got to experience his smile and his good humor, and we were lucky to do so. So Tom, thanks for everything. We're going to miss you greatly. We're going to miss your smile and your good humor and your laughter. And thanks for everything that you did for us, and rest well.
What I admire the most about Tom is how giving he was of knowledge. He was always so willing to share and never made you feel bad for asking even the most basic questions. Tom wanted to empower everyone on the team, and he did so by sharing his extensive knowledge and love for research. I also admired his humor, his love for trivia questions, and the joy he found in eating Chick-fil-A and Krispy Kreme when he would come to visit. Tom impacted my life by helping me have a smooth and wonderful start at Fidelity. He took the time to fly up to North Carolina and assist with the onboarding process. I'm sure there are a million of other things he could have been doing, but instead he wanted to make sure me and another new hire had everything we needed. Tom cared. And it showed through all the little moments. Those little moments added up in a way that will always be remembered. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Bui. I first met Tom Tullis in the early to mid-'80s at CHI conferences and human factors conferences, and I remember him best initially for his research on fonts and legibility and how useful the information was and how clean the study was. Since then, he has contributed to the community in many ways, both from research and practice, which is important to me because my feet are in both camps. And he was just a nice guy. I was disappointed that I never got the opportunity to work with him. I would have enjoyed that a lot. But I've made use of his work and his being, and I really valued him as a member of our community and as a general all-around good guy. So I'm glad we're having this opportunity to write our testimonials to him, and I wish his family all the best. Thank you.
This is Jakob Nielsen from Nielsen Norman Group. I knew Tom Tullis for about 30 years, and we mainly met at various conferences, including 1 year I invited Tom to speak at my conference, and he gave a really well-received seminar. But more importantly, that allowed us a lot more time to hang out in the speaker room and really talk. And Tom was always just, first of all, a very nice person to talk to, but also really interesting. He always had a lot of insights that were valuable. I would say his contribution to the field, there are many, but he's particularly well known. I thought he was a great contributor in terms of proving that you really can measure things and that we can make UX, in that sense, a little bit more of an exact discipline. And he always had very interesting findings from a lot of studies over the years that I always read with great interest and had an opportunity to talk with him at the many times that we met over the many years. So I will really miss Tom.
Tom Tullis was a dear friend and mentor. I had the pleasure of co-teaching classes with him and was always struck by a few things about Tom, among many. He was one of the most respected UX minds that graced our community, and Boston was truly lucky to have him. Amid all of this, though, what strikes me the most and what I will always remember is his humility and willingness to always learn, his curiosity, and his openness to different perspectives. When we would teach, we would have lengthy discussions, sometimes together in class, on our viewpoints. And yes, it was a lot of qual and quant. But what I will always appreciate is he never dismissed my point of view, And he never made me really feel junior in any way to him, even though his experience was just so much more vast than mine. I always told myself that when I grow up, I'd like to be like Tom, just because he was so approachable, he was so kind, and always willing to share. When I gave my first closing keynote at a conference and Tom graciously attended, he remarked afterwards by saying, "I wished I could have done what you did." I found that to be the most puzzling statement because I was able to do what I did because of the great guidance that I've always received from Tom. And thanks to Tom, I was so much better off for having spent so much time in his company and learning from him. I sadly only found out another hidden fact just days before his passing, that we actually share a birthday. So Tom, I hope to honor you on every birthday. And though we shared many a drink and lots of good dinner conversations, please know how much I will miss you, your cheery smile, and your fabulous, fabulous sense of humor. In this case, quant does trump qual. I cherished all the moments I learned from you, but I just didn't get enough. Godspeed.
Hi, I'm Randolph Bias. I'm pleased and honored to celebrate the life of Tom Tullis this way, though deeply saddened, of course, at the need to. In 2017, I was interviewed at the UXPA, and I lampooned my friend gently in the following way. I suffer that we people my age, Tullis.
It's your fault.
At my age and older, Tullis. And of course, we all wish he had gotten much, much older. He should have, and we would all be better for it if he had. Here's the thing about Tom that I've said before, and allow me, if you will, to say it again. What a rare mix. It's so unusual to find somebody that smart, that talented, and yet that nice. Most of the people I know that are real smart kind of beat you up with it. But Tom was approachable, accessible, caring, a great friend, and indeed a model, in a professional model for me. I will miss him.
I have this book near me all the time. In fact, I don't know too many user researchers who haven't yet read this book, Measuring the User Experience. So when I met Tom in 2018 at a New York City meetup, it was a very special day for me. Tom's talk was called UX Research, Past, Present, Future, and I was just so entertained by his storytelling. Afterwards, I remember going up to him and talking with him about his work, and I was just so struck by his low-key, easygoing, casual nature. He was so approachable, personable, and attentive. Cheryl and family, I'm so sorry for your loss. What I admired the most about Tom is that he put his family first. He was a family man. My dad was too. But your dad is such a legend. I hope you find comfort knowing that he touched so many people. There are so many people in our field who have been influenced by him directly or indirectly, by his books, his papers, his talks, his teaching, and his UX quizzes.
My friend and colleague, Tom Tullis, died on April 29th from complications of the COVID-19 virus. I first learned about Tom from his work on formatting alphanumeric text displays and incorporated that work into workshops and classes that I taught in the 80s and 90s. I met Tom in the late 80s at various professional conferences and local events. Tom loved to mentor, teach, and encourage those in the field. In the 2000s, I got to know Tom better through the Bentley HFID program, where we were both adjunct professors. Tom challenged me and helped me work out some tough problems. We were both geeky and would share statistics, humor, and create UX quizzes. He and I often joked about putting together a UX quiz that was so tough that only 5 people in the world would pass it, including us. Tom loved taking photos, something else we shared. He would often serve as unofficial conference photographer, and I would occasionally help him by filling in when he couldn't get to all the rooms. We would chat about the latest discoveries in astronomy and astrophotography, and both loved space stuff. I will miss my time with Tom. He was an extraordinary colleague whose teaching, mentoring, and contributions to the field will be remembered for a long, long time. Condolences to his family and friends.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I was a student of Professor Tom Tullis in the year 2005. And I just wanted to share a little bit about my memory of Professor Tom Tullis. I was at Bentley College in the Human Factors and Information Design program, again, 2005. He was my professor. And what I remember about Professor Tullis was he was a kind, humble, generous, authentic man. He was like a father to many of us. To me in particular, he was like a father. He was my destiny helper because Professor Tullis took me under his wings. As the only woman of color in his class, he took me under his wings. He offered me a intern position at Fidelity Investments. I had nothing on my resume, nothing at all, but he offered me a position and took me under his wings again, taught me how to run usability studies, how to actually, take the theory from human factors into practical. So I learned a lot under him. And as a result, because of this internship at Fidelity, I was able to, after graduation, get a lot of open doors from many, many other companies. I got a position with JP Morgan. And then after that, I moved to T-Mobile and then eventually Microsoft, which was my dream job here in Seattle. So, he, as I said, was my destiny helper. I just really thank God for him. And I did send him a thank you note a couple of years back and was so happy to hear back from him. But I just thank God for his life because I am he just gave of himself. He, much as he was at the top, he was a VP at Fidelity. He came down even to the interns. How are you doing? How are things going? He cared. He loved people. He was humble. He was always ready to help. He wanted to see others succeed, not just himself. I just really thank God for him. And my prayer, I believe in Jesus. I believe in God. My prayer is that God will rest his soul in eternal peace, and that he'll continue to comfort you, the family. He'll continue to comfort you even in this time, even beyond this time, that, you continue just to remember the man, the light that he was here on earth. He was a blessing to many of us, and I thank God for his life. I pray that, I can be like him. I can be a help. I can be a light in other people's lives as well. And that's all I had to say for now. I just continue to lift you all up in our prayers, and we love you. Take care. God bless. Bye.
I had the good fortune to know Tom Tullis for nearly 2 decades. I keep trying to think about how I first met him, and it's actually hard to. We ran into each other. UX circles are pretty small, and so we ran into each other in lots of different places and lots of different guises throughout my UX career and his. But I'm pretty sure that the first time I ran into him was in the guise of academia. Tom was renowned for not only his ability to be an uncompromising practitioner, but to be able to inspire those around him to greater heights of practice, and not only to be better practitioners, but better consultants, better professionals, and ultimately, I think, better people. To work for Tom and with Tom was to be held to exacting standards, and it was challenging at times, but absolutely fulfilling. I'm a better practitioner, a better researcher, a better UX consultant, and I think a better person for having known Tom through those experiences. So I ran into Tom in academia. I ran into Tom in practice as a colleague, as a consultant, and I also ran into Tom as I knew him better. I started to encounter really understand that Tom was not just an uncompromising monolithic practitioner, but someone who had the ability to inspire and inform and educate those around him fairly effortlessly. He's inspired in others the will to strive to do better, to be better, to do more, to rise to your potential, and that's absolutely precious and rare. But he also had the ability to do these things in a kind and funny way. And so, as I learned more about him personally, I began to realize that he had other sides to his personality. I met Mr. T Test. Mr. T Test and I and several others have had fun over the years, finding ways to help Mr. T Test help practitioners to be better at what they do. So I got to know Tom pretty well in UXPA circles, UXPA International, UXPA Boston. In both venues, Tom was an uncompromising documentarian of UX events, and integral to the growth and sustainability of UXPA Boston in particular. And so seeing him internationally, seeing him locally, I got a lot of exposure. And one of the things that Tom got a lot of exposure was photos. Tom was absolutely tireless. His energy was absolutely boundless for recording and capturing and photographing UXPA international events, UXPA Boston events. And he leaves behind a legacy not only of hundreds and hundreds of practitioners whose lives have been improved, but thousands and thousands and thousands of photos. And let me tell you, thousands and thousands and thousands of photos, well shot, thought out. And one of the things I think I'll miss most about Tom, beyond the ability to partner up or ask a question and to learn more from my mentor, but I'll miss seeing him crouching at every podium at a UXPA international conference, or standing under the lights in the back getting the right shot, or leaving a room to find that he was capturing a funny moment between two people in the hallway, to help capture not only the intellectual side but the human side of what we do. And so, Tom, I miss you. I'll continue to miss you, but I'm proud to have known you and proud to have been considered a friend, and really to have seen many of the different sides of your personality over the years. So, we'll miss you, Tom. Rest well.
My name is Susan DRAY, and like so many here, I don't remember when I first met Tom, but it certainly was a long time ago. Tom has always had a very important place in our community, and he's been someone who had a role that went beyond his scholarship. Of course, that was important. It was a role of setting the tone for the organization and for the profession, a role of openness and sharing, a role of scholarship and deeply understanding things, and a tone of humanity. He valued people and always showed that in everything he did. Maybe most importantly, he didn't take himself all that seriously, and so that he wasn't afraid to laugh. And I doubt any of us is ever going to forget that wonderful laugh of his. We will miss Tom so, so much. He helped us build our community to be a place that it is today, and his absence is deeply felt. Please accept my deepest condolences as you walk the sad path of grief. You are not alone, though it may feel like it sometimes. When that happens, remember Tom's amazing contributions and how his life has mattered tremendously. He has shaped the profession. And know that we walk with you. We walk with you and send love.